Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. Hope you're having a great day. We're going to go to Jeff Duncan here in just a second. But, growing up, I enjoyed reading a wide variety of authors. One was Kurt Vonnegut. I really enjoyed him. He had a way of taking like satire and social commentary and a little bit of dark humor and kind of bringing it together. And you've heard some of his stuff, Cat's Cradle, Slaughterhouse-Five. Player Piano, Breakfast of Champions. For people who know his writing, you know that well. But along the way, he said this. He said, "You learn about life from accidents. You learn about life from the accidents you have over and over again." We talk a lot about learning from your mistakes and just learning from life's experiences here a lot on this show. And he called them accidents. These unexpected and unplanned events that happen in your life. And he said, you get a lot of valuable lessons from those. He learned from those. He wrote about those things. But it's a great opportunity for learning and growth and self-discovery. And so, you get a lot of insights on yourself when you freeze frame those moments, and you look at them as an insight about yourself, an insight about others, an insight about the world around you. So it's a great opportunity for you to embrace these moments in your life, these unpredictable moments that arrive, and look at them actually as stepping stones for yourself and your own personal development, understanding of yourself. Anyway, if you haven't read Kurt Vonnegut before, I really highly recommend him. You'll understand when you read him how good a writer he really was. Okay, now let's shift gears and move over to my friend Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. And first of all, just say good morning. How you doing, Jeff?
Ricky, I'm doing good. We're drying out over here, like I think everybody on the Gulf Coast. Let's hope we don't have any more storms like that anytime soon.
No, we'll talk about, hey, Kurt Vonnegut, I see all the books behind you. You ever read anything that he wrote?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Kurt Vonnegut's a legend. And I really, as someone that grew up reading his work, you realize he's a master in his craft. I mean, one of the truly brilliant writers of our lifetime. I think as far as his prose, the way he structures his books, anything he writes, you can rest assured it's been crafted over time. And he's just a brilliant, not only writer, but also I think one of the brilliant thinkers of our time.
I agree. I mean, war and technology and existentialism and human condition, all these things he was big about. Hey, listen, the weather situation, man. I told Ann, it's been a while, a couple of days ago, it's been a while since we've experienced a storm like that. And the way I would describe it here, because, my pier was underwater and we had a debris line, the pool's full of green leaves. It was like a tropical storm came through. That's what it felt like. New Orleans, man, you guys had some significant rain. Of course, you had tornadoes in the region. And, some of the images coming out of New Orleans, the pumps just can't keep up when it rains like that. But you fare well?
Yeah, I think we were fortunate where I live in uptown New Orleans. We dodged most of the heavy stuff. I mean, almost the biggest concentration was on the North Shore and out toward Metairie. We just kind of got lucky in where we were at. Matter of fact, I went to lunch on Wednesday with former Saints punter Thomas Morstead. We had lunch together out in Metairie, and it didn't even rain when I was driving around. So I think we're fortunate. But I did get out for a walk last night in the park, and you could see where a lot of the standing water has caused a lot of damage, throughout the neighborhoods.
Yeah, I saw one of the photos that you posted showing the asphalt kind of breaking up. When you get a lot of rain like that on a road that already needs help, and then you drive over it. Yep, it's not a good situation. City's got some work to do. It's got kind of an ongoing situation as it relates to the roads, in New Orleans. But yeah, it was a kind of an interesting time. And Ann said, usually in the spring, it's a little bit of a harbinger of what's to come, this unexpected weather and whatever. And you start to think about some of the predictions about this year's hurricane season, and, hope it's not.
Right. Because we were lucky last year. I mean, with our hurricane season, let's hope we have a repeat of that.
We were. I was looking, I posted on my personal Facebook page some of the when Colorado State puts out their predictions, they actually have regions, and they like Louisiana as a whole, and then Plaquemines Parish, and the tip of the Mississippi River and Harrison County, and so on. It really kind of breaks it all down on what the probability is of, first of all, some type of tropical impact, and then some type of hurricane impact, and then a major impact. And look, the percentages that I saw were some of the highest I've ever seen before. So I hope that doesn't come true. We just need some continued quiet, don't we?
Well, look, I saw Wednesday, where I think one part of the region got 12 inches of rain in one day.
Yeah,
I mean, that's more than usually a month. You get 6 or 7 inches in a month. So to get 12 in one day, no pumping system is going to be able to handle that. I think we got 6 inches in New Orleans, but it's just too much volume to handle. So yeah, right. I hope it's just a one-off. We don't need any more of that.
I've got a rain gauge that I put out when we have a big rain event, because I'm a little bit of a weather nerd, and we had 4 inches here at the house. But the wind, man, we had some straight line winds that came through. It was quite an interesting storm. Even at one point, we thought might lose some screen that out on our porch, but it held together. But it made me wonder there for a second. I said, man, that is a big one. That's a tough one right there. Listen, you mentioned having lunch with Thomas Morstead. You wrote a terrific column about him, but you're talking about a guy who, first of all, he made a tremendous impact to New Orleans. He loves New Orleans, and for the Saints, he was just mainstay for the Saints. But he has stood the test of time. He has defied aging, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's 38. He's the one of, and I put this in the column, Ricky. He's one of 2 players left from the 2009 draft still in the NFL. Think about that. 2009 was a Super Bowl year for the Saints. Remember, he was the rookie, made the ambush onside kick to win the Super Bowl, help win the Super Bowl. And the only 2 players left in the league now from that draft are Matthew Stafford, who was the #1 overall pick, and Thomas Morstead. So it's a testament to his professionalism. He keeps himself in incredible shape, and then his ability to keep evolving as a punter. I mean, he's coming off arguably his best year in his 15-year career. He averaged 48.8 yards a punt. He had 99 punts last season, which was most in the league by far, most in his career, because the Jets couldn't move the ball offensively.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's been an incredible. And look, I think the Saints made a big mistake releasing him. I know some of it was cap related, but you and I have talked on this program a bunch of times. When people talk about their salary cap strategy, they get themselves in a bind and they have to make some decisions like that. And there's a cost to that. Their punter is not nearly as talented right now as Thomas Morstead. And that's a sunk cost, an opportunity lost by having to move on from Thomas Morstead because you haven't managed the cap in other areas. And I think that's what gets lost a lot of time with fans is they think, oh, they got under the cap again, so they made it. But there's a sunk cost there when you had to move on from players like Teron Armstead, Trey Hendrickson, and Thomas Morstead.
Yeah, we're having a little bit of crackling, I think, in the mic there. But hey, look, remind us how much of the Drew Brees situation cap impact happened even after he left.
Yeah, well, I mean, it wasn't that bad actually. The Saints were able to maneuver with him where they got basically him to split his salary cap cost over 2 years. He did them a very solid favor by reworking his contract after he retired, right before he officially retired. So it would count on the books over 2 years. And for a Hall of Fame quarterback like that, there's a huge cap cost to that. So by defraying it to 2 years instead of 1, they were able to split the cap over 2 years. And I think Tom Brady did the same thing recently with the Tampa Bay Bucks. And that's just some of the math that, the cap maneuverings that you have to do when you're living like the Saints are close to the cap every year. You really have to jump through a bunch of hoops to make it work. And when you have a Hall of Fame quarterback like that retire, there's definitely going to be an acceleration to your salary cap that's going to affect you. That's why most of the teams in the league, Ricky, when they can get a rookie quarterback and you play on that low number at the most important position in the league, you really have to strike while you can. That's what the 49ers are doing with Brock Purdy. They're paying him a very low cost. He was a 7th-round pick, so they can add players at all the other positions because they know eventually they're going to have to pay him $30-40 million a year. And right now they're paying him $1 to $2 million.
Real quick. Well, actually, we'll do this on the other side. But what I want to do when we come back is, watching New York Jets, you can't help but pay close attention to them. Of course, this incredible injury that Aaron Rodgers had is coming back now. They've got a pretty decent team that they've assembled. Be interesting to know what if Thomas Morstead is enjoying that. He seemed to be having a really good time in New York. But when we come back on the other side, we'll continue our conversation with Jeff Duncan. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show. We're talking with Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. And he just posted a column talking about Thomas Morstead, the former punter for the Saints, who's, he pointed out, is one of only 2 players still in the NFL, the other being Matthew Stafford since the 2009 draft. And so you had a chance to sit down with him and spend some time with him. You know him from his Saints days, but now he's 38 years old. I bet he's older, he's wiser. He was always a good guy. He was a terrific teammate. People enjoy being around him. Does he reflect a lot on his career when you're sitting with him? And how does he talk about being around all those young players in New York?
Well, I mean, I think he realizes he's on a year-to-year basically contract with his career. This will be his 16th year coming up. And what he really values most is being a mentor to the younger players. Like you said, he was a former, obviously, the representative for the NFL Players Association for the New Orleans Saints for a number of years. So he understands being a professional football player at all levels and the importance of investing your money, the importance of, taking care of yourself off the field so you can have longevity to your career. He tries to impart all that wisdom to the younger players who, frankly, when you're young, you're kind of dumb, right? You think it's going to continue going on forever. And so he does his best to try to educate his young teammates on the importance of investing more than anything else and taking care of yourself for your family down the road.
Well, speaking of age, he and Aaron Rodgers have something in common. So they're both kind of working against the clock. Yeah,
I mean, I think Thomas told me he's Aaron Rodgers is one of like 5 or 6 players in the league that's older than him, and that's it. There's no one left. It's interesting that the other punter, there was 3 punters drafted in 2009. Thomas, a guy from the Cincinnati Bengals who retired a couple of years ago, and Pat McAfee was the other punter.
Wow.
Who's been broadcasting now for several years, been out of the league for several years, and Morstead's still going strong.
Yeah, Pat McAfee is doing a great job. I pay pretty close attention to his approach, and I like it a lot. Hey, listen, just still, all this speculation about the draft. Will it be an interior lineman? Will it be a lineman in general on the offensive side? They need this clutch receiver now that Michael Thomas isn't there anymore. They need a tight end. Truth be told, they kind of need a lot of stuff, don't they?
Yeah, that's why, I made the case on our Saints Insider podcast this week. Of all years, this to me is a year for them to trade down. They only have 2 picks in the top 100. Historically, they've never done well low in the draft. Every once in a while, you get a Marcus Colston or a Zach Streif. But for the most part, when they've had their best drafts, they've had a bunch of picks in the top 100, and they only have 2 this year. So I think this is a year where they need help. Their roster is aging. They need young talent. And the player they get, Ricky, at number 14 is probably not going to be that much different than the player they could get at 20 or 21. I think they could trade down a handful of spots and pick up maybe another 2nd or 3rd round pick. There could be a player that starts for this team in the future or even this year and, kind of help this roster get younger and more athletic because they need so much help at so many different positions right now.
Yeah, I was looking at some of the grades of offensive linemen. We talked a little bit about this last week, but if you take like the top 5 offensive linemen and look at their grades are really not that different. It really comes down to of the top 5 is which they'll probably certainly get one of those guys. They've got they can really say, okay, well, the scores are kind of similar. We're gonna push it based on who's going to be a good fit for the Saints.
Right.
And they probably had that in their head already.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be certain guys with certain traits that fit their system better than others, or what they're looking for. Certain guys are better run blockers. Certain guys are better pass blockers. But I think this draft marries up extremely well with what the Saints need. I think they have to take an offensive tackle. There's just no other position that has that drastic of need. I can't remember them having this big a need going into a draft since maybe when they made the reach for Marcus Davenport because they needed a pass rusher. And there wasn't a lot of great pass rushers that year. The difference is this year, there's a bunch of good tackles. There's like 6 that could go in the first round. So I think the Saints are really in a great position, even at 14, if they stay there, to get a player that can immediately come in and start for them and answer a big question for them.
Yeah, trade down. I mean, because there are a lot of teams in this league that would love to have the 14th pick, and you might be able to get something of value, increase the number of choices you get, early in the draft. That a lot of people are talking about that. It's a rare opportunity,
especially Ricky, if one of the quarterbacks drops. Now, the big 3 aren't going to drop. They're going to go in the top 5. I think everybody knows Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Drake May. But if, say, for instance, one of these teams below the Saints falls in love with Bo Nix or J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix, if they fall in love with him, they feel like we need to go get him, then you're really in a good position to trade down a handful of spots, still pick up that offensive tackle you want. It's, say, pick number 20, and then you pick up an extra 2nd or 3rd round pick. I think that's the way to go this year. They can't afford, I think, to go through this draft and just have 2 picks in the top 100. All those picks they've got in the 5th round, I mean, that's just historically. I did some number crunching the other day. Since 2000, the last 20 years, they've had 43 players selected from 150 on down in the draft, and only a handful of them have ever even turned out to even be a multi-year starter. They've only had one player from that group ever make it to the Pro Bowl. That was Carl Nix, and he dropped because of some extenuating circumstances off the field. But more often than not, you're taking a flyer on a guy that might not even make the roster.
Jeff, I read a column the other day saying that a lot of the prognosticators are sleeping on the Saints. Is that a possibility?
Well, I mean, I guess you could say it's a possibility. I don't know. I mean, to me, I think all the indicators are that this could be a down year. I mean, they played the worst schedule in the league a year ago. They avoided all the elite quarterbacks. It's going to be much more difficult this year, and their roster's older, and they don't have a lot of enforcements coming in. I mean, they were handicapped a little bit in free agency. They've been underwhelming in that area. And like I said, the chances of adding an impact player, other than maybe with their 1st-round pick in the draft, I just don't see how this team is going to be that much better than they were a year ago. They were very fortunate in a lot of ways, injury-wise. For the first half of the season, they were one of the 2 or 3 healthiest teams in the league. And they were also well above normal for turnover ratio. And usually those things kind of come and go. So all the indicators would indicate that this year would be even worse than last year.
I would say the hopeful spin that I'd put on it is that Derek Carr, if he can stay healthy, really started to find his way later in the season. If he were to pick up from that point, especially with a new offensive coordinator, if we can get the running game going, we could. We've got some talented receivers. Maybe we'll pick up 1 or 2 others, but the reality is, we could. I mean, we could, do well. But your point about elite quarterbacks, if we're, the aging side of the ball in a big way is defense, and we've got safety especially. Let's look at that. Look at the defensive line. We've got work to do on the defensive side of the ball.
Well, when you look, that's what I think they can be better on offense. I don't think there's any doubt they better be better because they're going to have to score more points because they're going to be playing better offenses and better quarterbacks. But when they played good teams last year on offense, this defense got exposed. Look late in the year when they played the Rams, and they were down like 31-6 or something in that game right off the bat. I mean, that was just one of the only top 10 offenses they played all year. So, and I think that defense has gotten older, a year older. And, I just think there's some real concerns on that side of the ball. I think the offense is going to be better with help in the draft here, tackle and Derek Carr another year in the system and the offensive system itself. But they got work to do.
Latest thoughts on the Pelicans before we wind it up?
Well, last couple big wins. That win at Phoenix the other night was huge. They got a huge game this weekend against the Lakers at the Smoothie King Center. I think they're going to get in the playoff. In the top 6 is the goal, but if they can just get in, I think it's a step forward for the organization. Anything can happen once you get in the postseason. Yeah,
Zion has shown some brilliance. Finally, I mean, you were last week. You were saying, "Wow, they can't put it together," and then suddenly he becomes a barnstormer. So he's moving in the right direction, isn't he?
Yeah, and they have to have that. Now, I think the key with him is don't make it be just a flash. Let's do that every night. Let's see that energy, that enthusiasm, that effort every night. It's one thing to do it one night. You got to be a leader. You got to do it every night, and that sets the tone for the rest of the roster. But it was definitely good to see. You see the potential when you see that kind of performance.
You really do. You really do. Hey, Jeff, thank you for joining us. Glad you made it through the weather fine. And we'll see you next week, my friend.
All right, Ricky. Thanks. I'll talk to you then, buddy.
You bet. Hey, when we come back, we have JT Mitchell from SuperTalk Mississippi News. We'll see you after this.